Apes together strong. Rise of the Planet of the Apes was released at a time when its franchise wasn't doing so good. We all thought this reboot would be another failure in a dying franchise. But instead, that wasn't the case, as it was well received and made a lot at the box office for its smaller budget. Due to this, we would eventually get more sequels that would follow the great lines of this film and expand them even further. But this film is quite impressive for a low-budget 2011 film. And to see how great this film held up for its time, have a look now at my review on Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Before we start, don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoy it, and subscribe to my channel for more content. Thank you, and enjoy. Starting with the positives. The storytelling is really strong. It takes great inspiration from Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, where Caesar builds a rising army of apes that are seen used in lab experiments or being abused in animal shelters, which makes you have sympathy for them as for their desire for freedom. But when Caesar joins in the ape shelter, he makes plans to help the apes escape and return back to the forest. It's simple, not a complete rehash, and has its own share of fun to watch action scenes around the story. The acting is really sharp. James Franco, as Will, is really great, as he gives off a very serious performance to show his character determination to help cure his father from his Alzheimer's disease. All the actors are great, but Andy Serkis as Caesar is easily the best offender. Andy portrays Caesar via motion capture with little to no dialogue, with mostly the use of sign language, showing Caesar's behaviour and emotion, whilst also showing human-like traits beautifully. How Andy was not nominated for an Oscar for his role as Caesar is unbelievable, as this is a fantastic role in the film series. The whole film is also absolutely impressive, even for our film released in 2011. Its budget was only like $90 million, and the effects still look absolutely impressive. The motion capturing for the apes and just the general visual effects to make the film feel very much realistic is just impressive for its time. Sure, it's a little outdated due to it being a very dark movie at times, but with a low budget it makes sense. Still, it definitely looks amazing, and the CGI in the Planet of the Apes reboot film series is the best part of the entire series. Rupert Wyatt's direction is also very spectacular, giving the film a very decent pacing that doesn't make it drag on for too long. The directing of the final action sequence on the Golden Gate Bridge is very exhilarating, with the apes returning back to the forest home, all while avoiding the military. There's a lot going on, but that thankfully doesn't get in the way of its scenery, which would otherwise make it rather a mess to watch. Instead, it has that flow that makes you feel engaged to the film even more. Aside from Caesar himself, the rest of the apes are really likable as well, with my favourites being Maurice, Bright Eyes, Rocket, Buck, and Cobra. I really enjoyed seeing these apes on screen and helping Caesar make the apes better and allow them to escape. I enjoyed them all, especially Koba, who would become one of my favourite movie villains in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. And Maurice would turn to becoming the loyal advisor and friend to Caesar in future installments. The use of motion capture on the apes further shows just how impressive this film was at its time. What I also liked about this film is how it sets the bar high for the future of the rebooted Planet of the Apes series, as alongside the apes, it also describes the effect of the simian flu in a very powerful way. It was originally a drug testing said to cure Alzheimer's disease, but became a virus that caused the near extinction of humanity and the evolution of the apes on Earth. And ALZ-113 was created to make the effects permanent on humans. On apes, it made them even more intelligent and more smart. But humans, on the other hand, this proved to be fatal when it started to spread due to Hunnisker when we see his nose having blood dripping, which is a symptom of the ALZ-113. He spread the virus on the passengers on board on an airliner he piloted, bound for Paris, France, before travelling to Africa, then spreading it to Asia, and then Alaska, and finally San Francisco. Basically spreading across all the continents and causing millions of deaths worldwide. This would leave a huge impact on especially its sequel Dawn, where we get to see just how horrible the virus truly was. Lastly, this film revived the Planet of the Apes franchise that was originally a dying franchise. It became a surprising success and would eventually launch one of the greatest and most critically acclaimed trilogies ever made. Sure, the original Planet of the Apes films are classic films, but the rebooted series done more than just reviving the franchise. It also brought a lot more people into the fandom. And eventually, we would get more sequels that takes everything great about this film and makes it even better. Now starting with the negatives. The villains are very generic here compared to the next film, as to the point where even some don't consider them real villains. Stephen Jacobs is a greedy businessman, and Dodge Landon is your typical animal abusive jerk. They all performed well, but don't do a lot in terms of being the big villains in the story. And also not to mention the lack of development for the characters, which makes them forgettable at best. Also, the cinematography isn't exactly the best, as it doesn't look as good as the other films. Although it makes sense since the studio didn't have a huge budget for this film, so that's why the visuals look so dark. It's not as dynamic as the other films. I think with a bigger budget, the visuals could have looked so much better. And then I would probably give out some big praise for the cinematography itself. Lastly, some of the film hasn't aged too well by standards, even for 2011. The film looks very dark in a bunch of scenes, and some of the computer-generated CGI for the apes is a little outdated in my own point of view. However, this is still quite an accomplishment for a low-budget film in 2011. This would eventually lead to bigger budget films in the series, where with a bigger budget, the CGI only gets better with age. Overall, my final opinion on Rise of the Planet of the Apes is that it's a very potent start in the Planet of the Apes reboot trilogy. This is definitely an underrated film that I think anyone that is new to the franchise should give a watch. Compared to some of the rebooted films I've seen in my spare time, this one is definitely one of the more better ones I've seen. A great film, which eventually leads us to some even greater movies, is a big treat. And yes, I've said it once, and I will say it again. Apes together strong. What is your opinion on Rise of the Planet of the Apes? How would you rank it compared to the other Planet of the Apes films? Do you think it's aged very well for its time? What was your favourite moment in the film? Let me know in the comment section below. And also, don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. And subscribe to my channel if you're new to see more on my channel. Thanks for watching. Apes together strong in Rise of the Planet of the Apes. With a stylish direction done by Rupert Wyatt and impressive special effects, this movie brings life back into a long-running franchise.